Welcome to Chapter 24, Solid and Hazardous Waste. This is Part 1. This will be through Slide 11. Looking at solid waste in the United States, each one of us is responsible for 2.5 pounds per person of solid waste a day. If you look at that, that's over between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds, or 1 ton per person per year. That's a lot of garbage. Looking at this slide, what I want to look at the slide's a little bit confusing. Look at the non-municipal waste over on the left-hand side. That really incorporates only mining, ag, and industry. So in your notes you might want to show that. Mining, ag, and industry are non-municipal. So when you look at all 4 of these, mining, ag, industry, and municipal, that's 100% of the United States waste stream. Municipal is your garbage, your neighbor's garbage, my garbage. So municipal is about 2% of the entire waste stream. If we look at the non-municipals, the mining, ag, and industry, 75% for mining, and just think what you know from coal mining, and that extrapolates to silver mining, gold mining, bauxite, anything that is mined. There is a lot of waste there, and so that's where we get such a large number from. Agriculture and industry, approximately the same, 13 to 10%. Well, municipal, 2%. Is there any reason that I should reduce my waste stream? It's only 2%. Well, I go back to water use. Water use primarily is irrigation for cropland. And municipal water use is very minimal. But yet we have implemented low flow shower heads, low flushing toilets, fixture drippy sink, showering just for 3 minutes, things like that, to incorporate using less water. So it was important for water. It is also important for municipal waste and our waste stream. And let's look at our waste stream in the pie chart. That 2% is represented as a whole pie over here. The majority of what we throw away is paper, cardboard, notebook paper. Think about what you throw away in a day. Are you utilizing your paper recycling bins? Because this is the largest portion of what you throw away. Yard waste, food, and plastics comprise about 38% of what you throw away, which together is more than paper, but paper is the one source above all. So let's look at plastics, food, and yard waste. Plastics first. Plastics are recyclable, but as I've talked about before in class, the carbon footprint to recycle plastic is about the same as the carbon footprint to create a new one. So with plastics, recycling them, you get an inferior product most of the time when you recycle them, and the carbon footprint's about the same, if not maybe a little bit higher, from recycling. So plastic, yes, it can be recycled, but what's the benefit? Why should we do it? Well, plastics do not biodegrade. And again, I've mentioned this in class. They do photodegrade. And photodegrade means in the presence of sunlight they will start to break down. But even in the presence of sunlight, it takes a long time for that plastic to become excessively brittle to where it breaks down. And when it does break down, it breaks into small, teeny pieces of plastic that are very easy to incorporate themselves into the digestive tracts of organisms. And then it gets started into the food chain. So that's not necessarily an option. In landfills, they're not going to have the ability or the, I shouldn't say ability, the opportunity to photodegrade. They're going to be placed in the landfill where biodegradation is the way everything is decomposed. And they're not going to do it. So then you have these plastics that are taking up your landfill space. Food waste. Food waste, much of it can be composted. And this is something that you can do at your own home, and you're creating an organic fertilizer. Composting bins can be purchased at Lowe's. They can be purchased at Home Depot, and I think even Walmart or online. And most of them are right around $100, give or take a few dollars, and very easy to utilize. You put food waste and some yard clippings in and toss it around every little bit, and the compost will start to be created. Very, very fertile. You can access many different websites to tell you exactly what mix you need for the nutrient content that you want, and then you can apply this to the beds in your yards or even your yards and not use synthetic fertilizer. So not only are we taking stuff out of the food or out of the solid waste stream, but we're also decreasing the use of synthetic fertilizers by doing this now. And I'll tell you, do not use dairy products in composting, and do not use meat. Those will smell, and they do draw organisms that you don't want to have around, such as flies. Yard waste can be composted as well. Most of our yard waste, if you think about your trash, you're set up. The County of Palm Beach does a fantastic job with garbage. You have your recycling bins, you have a trash toter, and you have a yard disposal toter. And so you're already sectioning out your garbage so that our landfill, will last longer. Yard waste goes right into compost at the county, and the county has free compost for you. The only thing you have to do is get there, bring your shovel, and you can take as much of it as you want. So if you don't want to compost at home, you can utilize compost from there. And again, you're decreasing that use of synthetic fertilizer, but you do have to get to the compost area, and you have to have containers to put it in or a truck bed, because it is just, it's loose, it's not in bags. So these three things we can recycle some of it, if you will, to decrease this. This can all be recycled here in Palm Beach County. It's just how much of it do we actually recycle. While recycling all products across the board, about 33% of our trash is recycled. Discarded is about 54%. And incineration with energy recovery is about 13%. I would say that since this book has been written and this graph has been created, that we're probably closer to 20% incineration with energy recovery and taking that 7% and decreasing the 54% down. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Incineration, what does that mean? It means to burn something, doesn't it? So we're burning trash. Oh gee, well, all that stuff is nasty in the trash. What possible hazards could be put up? Air pollution and trash. Well, why is this increasing if air pollution problems are so prevalent? Well, we have the mechanisms anymore to abate or to get rid of the air pollution, with the exception of carbon. So because we have scrubbers and fabric filters and electrostatic precipitators and mechanisms such as this, we can clean the air and deal with a much smaller amount, 90% less solid waste than if we just put it in the landfill. So many landfill operations are going to incineration. Well, there's another positive with incineration, and that's they're making electricity. The heat from burning the trash is then piped to heat up water, which creates steam, which turns a turbine, and which creates electricity. That electricity then can be utilized to run the solid waste industry. And also, if they're making more than what they need, it can be put back into the grid because they're grid connected. Therefore, down in Florida, FP&L is not utilizing as much natural gas to make electricity. Okay, so let's look at this from a carbon footprint standpoint. Anything that's being burned, if it's organic, it's got a carbon footprint. That means carbon is going to go into the atmosphere. But if it biodegrades, it's going to go into the atmosphere as well. So that's a zero increase in carbon footprint if we burn it versus let it decompose. Okay, where do we get the net reduction in carbon footprint? By not utilizing as much natural gas or coal to produce. Also, we're preserving that limited non-renewable resource. Okay, so incineration with the air quality controls that we have and utilization of that heat for electricity is a good environmental measure. Not only do we reduce carbon, we reduce the waste stream by 90%, ensuring that the sanitary landfill that we do have will last, theoretically, 90% longer. Not quite, because you have some other things that cannot be burned that are going in there. So, let's look at something. I just want to touch base here because something I didn't say. Aluminum is made out of bauxite. Bauxite's actually the mined substance for aluminum. Bauxite mining, there's plenty of bauxite. Even though it's a non-renewable resource, there are large deposits of it in the world. So bauxite in the near future is not likely to run out. However, the carbon footprint for recycling bauxite or recycling aluminum is much, much less than the carbon footprint for making a brand new can, from mining to taking it to your house. So it's much better to recycle aluminum, hence you get paid if you turn in aluminum. So make sure if you're not getting your plastics recycled, make sure you're getting your paper and your aluminum in the recycling. Definitely. Looking at a sanitary landfill, well, how's it put together? You watched the video in class and that gave you a great diagram and he explained exactly how they were put together, and why, for the most part, they're relatively safe. Now, when I was a kid, they didn't do this. They dug a hole in the ground and they threw the trash in, and when it got full, they'd fill it in. And there's all kinds of things wrong with that. Think about if you dug a hole in the ground in South Florida and put trash in there to decompose in the sand. What happens? Very fast percolation in that leachate, or that decomposing liquid, is going to get everywhere, and that carries anything from heavy metals, dioxins, PCBs, known endocrine disruptors, to carcinogens into the water system, into the soil, changing the physical makeup of ecosystems. So that is bad. And your drinking water. So by doing a sanitary landfill, they're incorporating the use of a clay base, and remember, clay is not very porous, so it holds things just like a clay pot, and also utilizing big, heavy, thick plastic liners that also prevent that leachate from getting out. They also have drains in the bottom, and you can see these drains being installed in this one. And those drains take that leachate and put them into a holding tank. The holding tanks that they have, or sludge pits that they have, are also lined, and they dispose of that leachate through proper waste disposal mechanisms at this point. So we're working with all that. Another thing that you have, whether it's a sanitary landfill or an old-time dump, is methane gas collection. And methane will build up because you have low microbes, and that's their waste gas, is methane, and that's what's being put off. That's where it comes from, is the decomposition factor. Then the methane gas has to go up into the atmosphere. So more trash, more methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas, and it's much, much more potent than carbon dioxide. So there's no way to get rid of methane because it's actually coming from a microbial action, and that's going to happen as long as microbes have food to eat. They're going to metabolize and reproduce. So basically what we're doing now, we know that this is an issue, and we have the mechanization to pipe that, to actually collect it in pipes and pipe it and utilize that also for electricity. It's just a natural gas, just like propane. Methane can be used to turn a turbine and create electricity. So we use that as well. So not only are we using incineration, but we're using methane. Methane being used, there again, nothing's going to be put off. So no harm in using it for electricity because you're still going to have that carbon in the atmosphere. So where do you get a decrease? You get a decrease from not using fossil fuel to create the electricity. That's just a picture you saw. Look at all the bags. Look at all the plastic. Here. One thing in the Florida legislature right now, I just heard on the news last week, is that the state legislature is going to vote to allow individual municipalities to vote and create ordinances about the use of plastic bags in grocery stores, Macy's, wherever, Walmart. And each municipality can decide whether they're going to allow that use or not anymore. And with what you know about plastic bags now, I hope that you do become a little bit more conservative about using plastic. Okay, problems with sanitary landfills. We talked about methane gas, and we talked about leachate already. And another issue is that when you're done with them, you still have to monitor. What's going on down underneath the ground is not over, and it won't be over. The way we do sanitary landfills with the compaction that we get in them, decomposition rate is very slow. In some of the landfills, before we started putting layers of soil on every day in the landfills, before we started doing that, they would dig things up and they could read newspapers that were 50 years old. So you're not getting a lot of degradation because paper usually degrades very rapidly. Another problem is our plastic. And here we have, should we pay to use plastic bags? So another problem is when that landfill's filled up, not only do you have to monitor it, but what are we going to do with the rest of our trash? I know I don't want it in my backyard. I don't want to smell it. I don't want the birds. I don't want possible contamination. I don't want to listen to trash trucks all the time. And really, neither does anybody else. But let's face it, it's a necessary thing. Otherwise, we have so much disease that we can't get rid of it. And if we don't have good garbage disposal, people will start burning. And heaven knows what they're going to put in those burn bins. So then our air pollution issue gets to be an issue. Special problems. We've already addressed the plastic, but there it is in writing. Let's talk about tires. Tires don't biodegrade. The rubber in them, it doesn't biodegrade, and they float. And if you look at a tire, when you look at a tire on your car, the middle part, that metal part is actually a wheel, and the tire goes around that. So when you take the tire off, the tire is hollow, and the way it's created, it'll float. Well, it's also cupped on the inside where water can stand. And when the water stands in there, it gets nice and warm in the sun, and voila, we have vector breeding grounds. Tires can be used in many different ways. You can take old tires and reconstruct them into new tires. The padding underneath carpeting can be used from old rubber. Parts of cushions can be constructed from the rubber. Also, playground surfaces can be restructured. I know that in our community they just installed a brand new playground made of chipped up tires, and it's nice and soft. If somebody falls off the jungle gym, I don't think anybody will get hurt. For sure. So there's things that we can do with our tires, but definitely tires are an issue. Here's a man, just so you get the idea of how large this area of unused tires is. Okay, this is showing how incineration works. So you have your trash truck come in, and this one's actually showing that the truck dumps into the bunker. I went down to Broward and saw this system in action, and they tip out on a concrete floor. That gives them a chance to look through the trash to make sure there's nothing that was put in a dumpster in there that shouldn't be. And then they have little bobcat front end loaders that push it into the bunker. And then they get a look at it again as it's slowly falling into the bunker. Then see the big claw comes in, grabs it out of the bunker, and puts it into the furnace. In the furnace, then it's burned, and here there's the ash that's remaining down at the bottom. Then go in to the exhaust. Let me get the pointer going here. Go into the exhaust. Here's the boiler. So this is steam heating water That water then is going to go through a turbine, or create electricity. The boiler then is going to have gas coming off of it. The gas that heats this actually is outside of it. And it goes through, comes over here to the scrubber. The scrubber then has water in it, and it traps particulates, such as SOx, and it will get out some particulate matter too. And then goes through here, goes into electrostatic precipitator. Some of them have fabric filters. The one that I visited did have fabric filters. And then fly ash is created, and that fly ash then settles out into a hazardous waste landfill. And what comes out as emissions is clean smoke. Again, this is still going to have carbon in it, this clean smoke. This is much how they're set up so that you can see the process. So we've got two areas. We've got particulate matter from burning that was so lightweight that it didn't sink out in the initial ash. And so both of these have to go to hazardous waste landfill because now they're very, very concentrated. And if there are any chemicals in them, then the ratio is extremely high. And they can be an issue. And then you can see the water treated and reused, so that's a good thing as well. This is just to show you, talked about composting when we were talking about yard waste and food waste. This is a composting bin that can be bought. You put everything in at the top, and then you'll actually have layering. And this is the compost that comes out at the bottom. And you can see the picture on here. Here's your raw vegetables and food. As it goes down over time, you're going to get this. Now, a lot of the ones I've seen, because I'm not really sure how, because you have to stir these up a little bit. And I don't really know how this one stirs up exactly. But there's ones that are actually on arms so that you can roll them over. And that gives you the shake up. So those might be easier for home use than one like this. And if you want to, you don't even have to buy anything. You can use concrete blocks and create a small one in your yard. It does not have to be, as long as you do not use meat and dairy, you don't even have to cover it. You're not going to, it's not going to be a fly issue or anything like that. I had one in when I lived in South Carolina, and it was quite large. And we had really nice compost that we were creating and never had a problem with bugs. That is the end of part 1, and we'll start here for part 2. See you in class.